Hi, I'm Jennifer Perez, and today I'm going to be painting an abstract painting of a landscape in acrylics, and this is going to be very loose abstract. As you can see, the canvas I'm working on is texturized. What I used was gesso, and it was previously painted with some other landscape that I had, and I wasn't too happy with it, so I just went ahead and gessoed right over it with my palette knife. And that's what I'm using today. As you can see, I am sketching on with some light blue paint. These are acrylics that I'm using today. I'm just using a small little brush to do the outline of the mountains that I see in the background through my window. The landscape in the front. I'm not going to do any houses to this or any details either. I'm going to do a tree that I see right out my window that I love to look at throughout the year, especially when it blooms with these rich orangey red flowers on them. It's called a flamboyant. I do live in Puerto Rico, and we see these trees here quite often. And two pine trees, believe it or not. That is to my left. You can't see it right here in the shot though. So what I'm going to do is paint in my landscape, starting by my yellowish tones. I'm using yellow and white. The exact colors that I used will be in the description box down below. And I'm just using a medium-sized flat paintbrush that is used for either acrylics or watercolors. And I'm using a tad bit of orange right here. It doesn't matter if you go paint over the lines, the guidelines that is, because you won't even get to see these little guidelines that I painted beforehand with the finished product at the end. And at the beginning of the video, you probably saw a piece of paper with a rough sketch on it with a pen. And that's what I tend to do. Sometimes I just fold my paper in 4 parts and sketch in whatever idea pops into my brain. And I usually have these papers in my purse or in a notebook that I carry around. And every time I have any free time or I think of something, I'll just go ahead and sketch it out, either to paint, to draw later on, or even to do some small nail art. I do nails also. If you'd like to check out that channel on YouTube, if you're into nails, go ahead and check out Mystic Nails, or check out my website at mysticnailspr.com. That's the site that I have at the moment, so you can see my artwork there, any crafts, paints, tutorials, etc. So I just added a little bit of white, and once you start painting like your yellow colors, and you saw I went through my oranges, the yellow would be kind of starting to get dry because acrylics do dry faster. So I just go ahead and clean the brush because it started raining and I wanted to enjoy the rain and the winds. So by now, the rain stopped a tad bit. It's just like a few drops falling from the sky now. And I'm going to continue painting. We are under tropical storm watch in Puerto Rico, and I just feel like painting. Can't go out and enjoy nature because of the pocket rain that rains and these gushes of winds that start blowing. So I decided to stay in today and start painting some abstract, loose painting of a landscape. So as you can tell, I'm using red. The top area of my sky which are in these golden tone colors, are dried. Keep in mind you don't need to sit down and paint the whole painting like from start to finish and injecting bada bing, you're done. No, you can just paint whatever you feel comfortable with, think about it, go do something else, come back again. It's all up to you. This is creative work. This is just having fun, and I like to paint for fun. And it keeps me in this zen harmonious mood because painting for me is very meditational. This is like my self-medication, like one of my friends said. My background mountains, this is an abstract piece, so keep in mind that the colors do not have to match the exact colors in nature. You use whatever colors come to your mind, what colors can be combined, what colors are contrasting colors one to the other, etc. So I'm using like a lime green, a tad bit of blue in my mountains. The mountains in the background behind my painting, you can hardly see them right now. It's totally white because it's raining back there. We do live like in a valley area and it tends to rain here. So when it says it's going to rain in town, it rains around this area. If you live where I live, you know exactly where I'm talking about. What I did in my mountains, let's go back to the colors. I did lime green with some blue. I have red in the middle area, and I want to merge these colors with some oranges just to bring down that orange from the sky down to the bottom. And I'm still using that same flat brush. And just dip my brush into a tad bit of white. Don't be afraid to mix your colors a bit. After you have this background color, you can come and paint over them with some other colors or even intensify the color if you like, or add some light, add some shadows. I like to build colors one on top of the other once they start like drying. Don't be afraid to use any other kind of tool, like combs, other brushes, your fingers. I always make a mess on myself, paint everywhere. And I just keep on painting with some orange. You can use sponges also to give it texture. You can tone your canvas like I did in a previous video, which I did this kind of vintagey look to my canvas. Sky's the limit. Whatever is in your mind, go ahead and paint it out. So let's highlight the mountains a little bit because I do have some golden tones in my sky. I want to add that glow to the top of my mountains. As you can see, it kind of looks like this tealish greenish color to it, and always black. I always tend to use some black in my paintings. Oranges. I like colorful paintings. That's what I was talking about with my sister. She's like, but I noticed you've been using the same colors. I'm like, yeah. So in the living room I have a couple of my pieces, and come to think of it, after my conversation with my sister, I noticed I use a lot of reds, a lot of oranges. Colors that are alive. Don't get me wrong, I love pastels too, but I'm drawn to colorful things. So I painted the bottom half of my canvas in black, and I added some brownish tone to it just to get the golden tones from above, because I am going to take this golden brownish tone to my sky. You'll see why in a minute. And the brown reminds me of the earth, where trees grow out of it. There's rocks, little critters that like to play on the earth, we humans that live on earth, etc. So I'm using magenta or fuchsia, however you want to call the color. I like to call it a lot fuchsia because I am Latin. That's no excuse for using that color, but where I'm from in Venezuela, we call the color fuchsia. So in English, you can call it fuchsia too, or magenta. So if you hear me saying fuchsia or magenta, you know what I'm talking about right there. So let's take that brownish toned color that I used at the bottom and I mixed it with a little tad bit of orange. You can even add yellow tint from your paint to this. I just wet the tip of my finger and blended this throughout the top of the canvas. Don't worry if your mountains are still kind of wet. Mine kind of are, and you can still see the outline that I did at the beginning. Like I said, you're not going to be able to see that line later on. So the rain is heading over. I can see a few drops right there next to the tree. On the screen to our right, and the flamboyant tree that's behind my painting can hardly be seen. It's really pouring back in the mountain area. So don't be afraid if you get some orange or yellow popping through. That's the idea. That's the idea that I like to use. Now we're gonna get the streak marks. Watch this with magical water and finger action. Just blend it through. Now the colors look much livelier, and you can see the details of the different colors that I have going on the canvas when you look at it with your own eyes, like right in front of you, because the camera doesn't tend to pick up these tiny little details. If you like this channel, go ahead and subscribe up above. Hit that subscribe button. On my YouTube channel, which is for arts and crafting, at Jenz Art Creation, and you can check out my website at mysticnailspr.com. And here is the background already. It's kind of wet. You can leave it as is and go do some other stuff around the house, run some errands, and come back to it. So mine is kind of dried right now, and I'm going to go ahead and paint some of my trees. I'm bringing the reds up above to my trees. Remember, this is an abstract piece. We're doing the shape of the tree. The flamboyant tree tends to be like an umbrella-like tree, and it's elongated at the bottom and has like these super nice branches going on at the bottom. It has these wonderful flowers. They come in different shades. There's yellows, oranges. I was told there was purple, but I have never seen a purple one in Puerto Rico. So just draw the basic shape, and then I'm going to draw in my 2 pine trees that are on the side. Remember, just basic shapes, no details. And the flamboyant tree also has these, I don't know what it is. I think it's like some seeds or something that they're elongated and they hang. When the tree is kind of dried out and there's no leaves on it nor flowers, these long little stems are black. So then slowly when they start growing out, they're like these lime green colors, and they have like this little yellow tint to it. So I'm just going to do 2 pine trees on my side. And you can see the shadow of the mountains. Don't worry about it because it will cover up later on. So try to use an acrylic paint that is kind of moist. Don't let it dry out. I like to use these glossy or smooth kind of acrylics that when you paint over, they seem like they are really creamy and they merge together well with other colors. And also that you can cover up. Like right now, you can see that line of the mountain. Later on, you will see it will cover that up. It won't be like see-through. unless you water it down and to get the water effect, a translucent effect. So let's go ahead and put some orange and magenta in that tree. So your colors will merge together, and I just scratched this just to give it an extra little detail because my canvas is gessoed and it has some texture to it, and I did leave it overnight to dry with the gesso texturing. So I'm just going to try to put on my tree whatever color is around them. Some pop of that bluish lime color will go up there. It won't be too stark, so don't worry about it. If you want to opt this out, go ahead and do that too. Add some white, add yellows, you name it. Put purple up there, put blue. Sky's the limit, like I told you. So let's give a little bit more of that highlight of the golden tones at the top of the mountains. I do have 3 right here. The mountains behind me and the landscape, the real landscape behind my canvas is quite mountainous. You can't tell like where I have my camera right now. And they're all taller, but just kept these kind of low. Remember, you don't have to copy the exact thing you see outside. Just a basic idea. So the fuchsia magenta that I have at the bottom, I am bringing it up to my trees. As you can see on the flamboyant tree on the left, you can't hardly see that line from the mountains like I told you, like you could see beforehand. In my pine trees you can still see a tad bit, but that'll be covered up pretty soon. Remember to get your shadows in there also, just to get a perspective of where the light is coming from, which is in the just right off the center. I didn't centralize it. I just have it just a tad bit to my left. And it's a 1/3 from the top. So keep that in mind. Leave your horizons like a 1/3 from the top or from the bottom. And that way your eye travels up and down and all around on your canvas. Just play around with those colors, make your eyes bounce from one side to the other. Keep yourself entertained most of all, and the person who is looking at your piece. You paint happy things that make you happy. What better way to let your feelings come out and paint them away on a canvas and hang them up in your own home. So I'm just going to use black for my trunks. I'm bringing the black from the bottom, and we want to add a little bit of shadow to this. Remember, it is abstract. You choose the colors you like. And like I said, the flamboyant is kind of like an umbrella shaped. So if you have the chance to see one, go ahead and study a bunch in town. So I'm just using a smaller brush, and the brush I used, that I mentioned before on the trees, was a rounded brush. This is kind of like a liner, but it's much thicker than a liner brush. Just drag out towards the left diagonally the shadow. And we are going to add some highlights to this later on. So let's do the trunks on the pine tree. As you can see, I kept my trees all in the same horizontal line, because if you do look out my window, you are going to see these trees like straight across on the same piece of land. So living in Puerto Rico, it's kind of weird having some pine trees here, but there's a couple of species of pine trees. And with the flamboyant, my sister's like, no, they're together. I'm like, yeah. When you come over, just look out the window and you'll be able to see them. So let's use some white with the same liner brush and just highlight some spots of the trunk and on the leaves where the light would hit them. And don't be afraid to bring up those fuchsia colors or purples, teals, yellows in the trunks also. Just gives it a little bit of whoever looks at your piece closely will get a hoot of looking at all those colors that you put together. And it does work. So my 2 pine trees have their shadow also diagonally towards the right, excuse me. So let's grab some bluish purplish color, and we're going to blend it out with our fingers at the ends. We're using some water and go right over it. We want to get this translucent effect to it. The paint is kind of watered down, not too much, because I don't want it to make a big splash on my canvas and ruin the background color I have on there. Just an idea. Just give it a basic little shadow. And do the same to your pine trees. And blend it out with your fingers. And the brush I used was the brush I used for the trees, which is a rounded brush. So I'm just going to use that blue greenish colors that I used in the mountains and just bring it a tad bit down to the canvas. So back to the drawing board. By now, my painting is totally dried. It's still raining out. So I just switched my painting to the other side of the room because it is kind of breezy and the water comes through the window. And I don't want to waste my painting, so just switch it around. And I do want to continue and finish this today. I'm taking my liner brush that I used beforehand, and I'm going to paint just 2 or 3 of those elongated lime green strands that are in the tree. I'm using basically a lime green color and giving a little tad bit of highlight in yellow, and if you want to use white to it, you can too. If you want to give it, you can't see the detail right now, but I use later on some darker greenish color behind it just to give it a tad bit of shadow. And if you want to go ahead and use your red, go ahead and do that. Just use a darker red to give that shadow effect to it. And on the bottom side of the screen where you can see this little face with some nails on it, that's just some pop art that I've been experimenting and trying out. Just practicing on some acrylic papers. What I did was cut my paper in 4 pieces and did different sketches of pop art just to get a feel of it, and then go ahead and bring that up to a larger scale on a canvas. So go ahead and paint your flamboyant flowers on. Remember, the ones in front of my window are orange, and they have these reddish orange when you see the shadow. And some of them have these little white little seeds in them, so just go ahead and use that same liner brush and paint some white little dots. And if you want to give it a much more happier effect, because you do have golden tones in your sky, add a tad bit of yellow to it. So here's the finished product, and just in case you're wondering, the music I am using is my father's from Perez. You can check out his website, rotsandperez.com, or at his YouTube, Rots and Perez Band. Take care and have a great day.